Welcome to the Hair Loss Show, where Dr. Russell Knudsen and Dr. Vikram Jayaprakash discuss issues relating to hair loss and the medical and surgical treatment of hair loss in both men and women.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Hair Loss Show. Russell, good to see you again.
Thank you.
And in today's episode, we're going to talk about going back and talk about medication. And we've talked a lot on this channel about medical therapies for people that are experiencing male pattern hair loss or androgenic alopecia. And when we're talking to patients in clinic, one of the things is, well, so doc, tell me how much can I expect to regrow my hair? And that's, when I hear that question, I go, okay, we've got to take a step back and then reframe what the whole concept is and what's the expectation of outcome with any sort of medical therapy, specifically in the case of androgenic alopecia or male pattern hair loss.
So the important thing for people to understand is that there's kind of two phases in androgenic alopecia. There's the initial phase where the diameter of the hair shaft reduces, right? And then at the same time, you get to the stage where the hairs have become so weak that they spend most of the time resting, not growing at all. So you get a loss of numbers. So it's loss of quality is the first phase, loss of numbers is later on. And once you get to loss of numbers, regrowth becomes an extremely difficult topic.
And that's why, it's when people are experiencing hair loss, certainly with the type of hair loss that we're talking about, it's not an overnight phenomenon. You would find that the area starts to look thinner and a little bit more see-through, and that's a gradual process that occurs with time.
And that's also a part of what we call senescent or aging hair loss, because the most amount of hair any of us are going to have on their head is up until about the age of 25. And then gradually over life, the number that are willing to grow and the shaft diameter is going to slowly deteriorate as well. And that's just a natural process of aging. So when people come in and tell us that they don't have the same volume that they had 20 years ago, I tell them that's exactly true for me too, that I had more volume in my hair 20 years ago than I do today, and that's a natural process of aging. So there is the androgenetic alopecias, or the female pattern and hair loss in women, but there's also just natural aging. And the reality is that even when we use all of the stimulants that we have at our disposal, that it has to be a halfway decent hair for it to actually thicken up. And thickening up isn't really about getting more numbers to grow. It's about getting the diameter of the hair shaft to thicken. And that gives the better volume and the better blocking.
So if we just pictorially, if you have a sort of 100% thickness at this point, over time, with the effect of hormonally, genetics, etc., you'll gradually move down this scale. And so with medication, if you can get it at that early enough, then you've got a chance of improving that thickness. But if you after a certain level, you may not improve thickness, you may hold on to what you've got at best. But if you've got an area, it's thin and it's devoid of any hair, well, the expectation shouldn't be that any medication is suddenly going to make you grow new hair.
Yeah, there are hairs in resting phase. And so when we use stimulants, sometimes we take them prematurely or we accelerate them coming out of the resting phase back into growing phase. But the reality is, they only have a life cycle.
Yes.
Right, and a miniaturized hair has a short growth cycle, a long resting cycle. So a lot of people who use these stimulant medications tell us that they start to get excited because they get some fluff, that they see some fluff happening, and then it never gets beyond fluff. And that's the reality, is they were able to stimulate the hairs out of resting phase back into the fluff stage, where they couldn't make it anything more than fluff because the hair had deteriorated too far to actually grow back a healthy hair. And this comes down to what we were talking about before, stem cells.
Yes.
Because as the hair thins and miniaturizes, the number of stem cells that are existing at the base of the follicle and at the bulge region diminishes as well. And there is just a critical point of no return, and it roughly is at the 50% mark. If you get to a 50% loss of the quality of the hair, that's 50% loss of your stem cells. In our animal studies where we've looked at this, where they've cultured stem cells from the own animal and applied it back to the hair, it didn't work. So for that to even work, it has to be done in the early stages of thinning, because it's even supplementing stem cells when you get to a very miniaturized hair isn't going to work.
It's not going to be beneficial, yeah. So I think that's another important point to highlight, which is in the absence of any stem cells, then all the medication or medical therapy, be it finasteride, be it minoxidil, be it low-level laser or platelet-rich plasma or any other regenerative therapy, it's not going to make you suddenly grow a hair follicle where there wasn't one before.
No, but this is just again for buyer beware. The fact that anything that you apply to the scalp can, in theory, even with mechanical stimulation, take a hair from resting back into a growth phase. Lets people have some very weird ideas about what works.
Yes.
So, for example, the one that I always come back to is the British farmer. It was on the front page that he had a cow that used to lick his bald scalp, and after 6 months there were a few hairs sprouting up. So he thought that meant that there was something in the cow's saliva that was a hair growth, and he was going to investigate that. Whereas classically what was happened there is that the mechanical massage of the scalp had taken a few of the remaining hairs that were in resting phase and brought them back into the growing phase. So that's where 1,000 products on the internet can be sold saying that you can see regrowth. Apart from natural cycling, there are hairs that can be, with anything you apply to the scalp, you can bring them back out of resting phase into growing phase.
Yes, I think that's a very important point to remember, because you're seeing a lot being marketed about this cure and that.
And caffeine shampoos and everything else like this. And just because it works in the laboratory doesn't mean it works in real life.
Yes. Good. Well, I hope you found that useful. And please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you again on the next episode.
Thanks, everyone.